you'll never be as good as them. Why even bother? Sounds familiar? If you've ever experienced similar inner thoughts, stick with me for the next couple minutes, because in this week's episode of YouTube Art School, I'm going to show you why and how this negative inner voice is holding you back, but more importantly, how to transform it into your biggest supporter instead. Let's get this class started. Class is in session. Pay attention. And pay the class fee of either one like or one sub for this valuable life advice. Oh, and while I'm talking, I'll be painting something pretty epic, not guaranteed, in the background, so stick around to the end to see how it turns out. Even if psychology isn't your thing, at least you'll have something fun to watch. Win-win. Now, let's get crystal clear on what we're talking about here. You know that dialogue that you have with another you in your head? That's your inner voice. Most of the time, we don't think about it, but it's a constant thing throughout our life. And here's where it gets interesting. There's been tons of research on this, and what I'm about to share applies not just to art, but to everything in life. So let's try a quick experiment together. Whatever you do, do not, and I repeat, do not think about a bright yellow banana. Don't do it. It's impossible, right? Whatever I said, you would have still thought about it, even if it were something terrible, something like negative about you, maybe. One fascinating thing about our minds that I've been reading about a lot lately is that they don't process negatives the way that we might think they do. If you hear, read, or watch something negative, whatever that might be, it will occupy some headspace whether you want it or not, like that banana example. And this ties into something scientists call the illusionary truth effect, where anything repeated enough times will start to sound true. It's actually often used in propaganda because it works so well. There's been crazy studies on repetition showing people will believe almost anything to be true after hearing them multiple times over time, even when those things were clearly demonstrated to them to be false ahead of time. It just defies logic. And my point here is that if you keep telling yourself, there's no way I can draw that in a million years, or this person must have talent, or whatever, something I don't have, well, you'll come to truly believe that over time if it's repeated enough, even if it's not true. If that negative inner voice is never balanced with even more positive inner talk, you'll tend to be miserable because, well, guess what? You're basically running propaganda campaigns against yourself. That's deep. So you let your inner voice repeat it enough and you'll believe it, even if it's completely false. And nobody is immune to this. It's just how our brains are wired. Some people naturally have a more positive inner voice, others more negative. A lot of it apparently comes from our upbringing or environment. But here's the good news. You can change it, and we'll look at solutions a bit later. But before that, I wanted to bring up a terrible trigger for that negative inner voice. Something more specific that you should consider as an artist. Don't compare yourself to others. As artists, it's almost always destructive, with basically no upside. Sure, occasionally it might feel motivating if you're in exactly the right headspace, but most of the time, it just triggers that negative inner voice. Let me get personal for a minute, but when I started YouTube, I was obsessed with Social Blade rankings. It's a website where you can see the rankings of other channels. Every single day, I'd check if I was ahead of my competition, even though they didn't know I was competing. But if they were getting more subscribers in a certain month and growing faster than me, I'd get so mad, jealous, and getting ahead made me feel good, but just until they were ahead again, or until I found a new competitor who was ahead. But not once did this actually help me make better content. All it did was feed that negative voice in my head. And the same thing happened with my art before I made a crucial change. I used to constantly browse ArtStation where every piece on the front page, was mind-blowing. I just stopped looking. Now, when I need inspiration, I look at studio work instead of individual artists. Like anime, Netflix shows, animated movies. There's something about knowing it's a team effort that keeps my inner voice from going into comparison mode. It's been a game changer for my mental health, and this applies to anything that you can compete for in life, really, which is kind of helpful to realize. At least it was for me. Focus on you and you'll be a lot happier. Maybe not. But one thing's for sure, that comparison with others is devastating if you're trying to have a more positive inner voice. But what about actual solutions? How can you flip that script from negative to positive? Now let me break that down while I wrap up this painting. First up, rituals. Science shows that having daily rituals gives you back a sense of control that helps quiet that negative inner voice. We tend to be harder on ourselves when things are chaotic, like when it feels like you're not in the driver's seat of your own life. So again, introducing small rituals in some aspect of your life will help give you back some of that control. Taking myself as an example again here, I'm just a normal person with ups and downs, and rituals definitely work for me. Like every morning, I prepare myself a pot of green tea, wash and cut some fresh vegetables from a local farm, and I start my day that way. It could be whatever. In a couple of years, it might be something else, but it's something that I do consistently now. It's something that I have complete power over, even if it's insignificant. Now, one way that I found to feel even better is to focus on rituals that have potential for growth. So they feel less like a chore and more like a game. One of those that I have, for example, is gardening, if you can call it that. I just grow like cherry tomatoes, but taking care of those plants and seeing them grow is a small win that I get every day, even if everything else ends up sucking. Like when a painting or a video doesn't do as good as I hoped, I might feel down, but I can balance that with another ritual, like crushing it at the gym. So views might be down, but muscles are up. It's all about creating multiple channels for success. And speaking of success, let me quickly tell you about another way to seriously level up your art game. Before we get to the next solution, I want to mention something exciting about my art program, Art School for Digital Artists. So last week we hit 26,000 registered students, and to celebrate, we're running a special sale on the full program. So check the link in the video description for details. Join our awesome art community and private Discord to see what you've been missing out on. The price is going up next year, so now is actually the perfect time to jump in. All right, back to those solutions. By the way, I'm getting those tips from Ethan Cross, a professor of psychology and neuroscientist. So apparently there's scientific evidence that having an orderly, clean environment does a great job at promoting positive inner dialogue. So clean your damn desk. And then last but not least, nature. Something magical happens in your brain when you look at the sky through tree branches or walk in the woods, or even just stroll down the street lined with trees. It has this mysterious power to calm our minds and quiet that negative self-talk. And these aren't big changes. It's stuff that you can start to do today with minimal effort. So do it! The more you catch yourself when that inner voice starts talking smack, the easier it gets to flip the script. Transform "that's too hard" into "that's challenging, but I can learn it step by step." See the difference? Because whatever your inner voice keeps repeating tends to happen, because it's what you'll end up focusing on, good or bad. So focus on the good, repeat it. It sounds like magic, but it's all research based, and this stuff just works. Just like the brushes that I used for today's painting of Jinx, and you can get both my free brush set and my advanced painter set with the links in the video description. Oh, and also I'll probably upload a version of the painting on X in case you want to use it as a phone wallpaper. Just follow me there and you'll know when it drops. See you next week, same time. Don't be late for class.